Thank you, Andy. Thanks, everyone, for attending this talk. Let me get a temperature from the room. Hands up if you've ever worked in a platform team or a platform department or some sort of platform group. Perfect. So you're in the right talk. Good. Hands up if you like milkshakes. Yeah. You're also in the right talk, weirdly. So, and also, I've got a guy called Steve in the talk, and then Andy noticed that he actually looks a lot like Steve Smith, if anyone knows them. So don't tell them anything about this talk if you do know him. Anyway, so I've worked for a few companies. The first few taught me how stream-aligned teams worked, but the last few ones had really shaped the way, and changed how I think about platforms and product, and obviously milkshakes. The milkshake thing will make sense in a bit, but working at Cinch, which was the previous company, led to some really interesting growth for me, and some really awesome things like our work being presented at AWS reInvent. So this is Dr. Werner Vogels at reInvent, I think 2022, presenting our entirely serverless event-driven systems built on AWS. So as part of building the platform we use to build those systems, so I learned a lot. But I worked at every scale you can imagine, from startup to scale up to enterprise. So I've seen different flavors of platform. So this is where I want a quick audience interaction. Thanks, Dan, for preparing everyone. What do you think when you hear the word platform? And I've seen Dan North do this quite aggressively. This is where you put your hands up. So someone put a hand up. What do you think when you hear the word platform? Anyone? Optimized software delivery. One more.
Digital versus heritage.
Digital versus heritage. One more. Self-serve capabilities. Great. No one said Kubernetes. That's great. Happy about that. But platform is an overloaded term. Actually, those three were really good definitions. Obviously, we're in the platform track, but no one thought about milkshakes, which is a bit disappointing. So I won't try and give a definition for platforms, not just yet, but I will talk about milkshakes. There's an interesting story I came across where a popular fast food chain wanted to sell more milkshakes. So they did what every marketing person did at the time. They profiled the people they thought were buying milkshakes, and they asked those people with that profile loads of clarifying questions. What do you like in milkshakes? And obviously nowadays they said they like pistachio, which is very, very trendy at this point these days. So they added pistachio milkshakes to their menu because they thought, well, that's the killer. And they expected the sales to go up. Now, unfortunately, this was not the reality. They didn't sell more milkshakes. Pistachio made no difference whatsoever. I made up the story about pistachio, but it's the same story anyway. So then they wondered, well, why are they really buying these milkshakes? They noticed something odd, that before 8:30 in the morning, there was a spike in milkshake sales. So they wondered, well, why is this happening? So they went to the fast food places like any good product person would do. So they said, right, okay, let's keep some notes. Let's speak to the customers and see what they're doing. So to find out what's so special about the mornings before 8:30 a.m. What they found out was that most people were actually about to go on a long commute to work. And they wanted something to keep them occupied. A few people said that they tried bananas. We all know that doesn't last long, definitely for the 23 minutes drive that Bart Simpson is going on. Other people tried a great chocolate as well, which also doesn't last that long. And a few other people tried a bagel, which makes loads of sense. Great choice. I would go for that. But it's too messy, and it definitely doesn't last 23 minutes. Anyone willing to guess what people were using instead? Milkshakes. Yep, very good. So milkshakes does the job, or almost. So they discovered that the job wasn't to drink a milkshake. It was, when I have a long, boring drive to work, I want something that keeps me engaged and full so I can get through my commute without feeling bored or hungry. That was the thing that they wanted to do. That's the thing that they bought the milkshake for. So that insight led them to design thicker milkshakes with bits that lasted longer, which perfectly suited the job. They wouldn't have found that out without doing that type of research. So that's the job to be done that they discovered. And this approach is about shifting focus from features to the progress people are trying to make. And it was introduced by the man on the left, Tony Ulwick, in the 1990s, and popularized by Clay Christensen, the man on the right. There's a great video on YouTube about this, so you can go and watch. It's about 8 minutes. It's really, really fun story. Why am I talking about milkshakes? Well, what's the equivalent long commute for platform? When I started thinking about this, I thought, well, there's at least 4 of them, and there's many, but let's try and list some of them. So, number 1, a few people have mentioned this already. When I need to spin up a service, help me get to production safely with the least friction, so I can focus on delivering business value rather than infrastructure setup. Number 2, when I'm choosing how to build, make the sensible path obvious with an escape hatch, so I can move fast and focus on delivering value. Number 3, when I hit issues, help me understand what's happening across systems, so I can fix problems quickly and keep delivery flowing. And finally, it's not only about delivering, it's also about experimenting. So help me do it quickly without bureaucracy, so I can validate ideas quickly and scale them if they work. So those are some examples of things that you might want to do. What's the milkshake equivalent for platform? So let's try and give it a definition for platform. A platform, in my eyes, is simply a set of capabilities and golden paths that product teams can hire to get their job done faster, safer, and with less friction. That is at the core of what a platform is hired for. And that's our version of a milkshake. If you've just walked in and you're wondering why we're talking about milkshakes, that's the slide. Hey, Amrit. So what's the fast food equivalent of platform? It's platform engineering. So it's about designing and introducing those capabilities so teams can achieve fast flow. So we went from Bart Simpson having a job to be done, which is that long commute, to the milkshake, which is the platform, and to the fast food place that is platform engineering. So in platform terms, it's not about building those giant abstractions. It's not about internal products that no one asked for, but it is about creating the right defaults, thin layers, and golden paths that let teams achieve fast flow without losing autonomy. Really important slide of the day at this conference. What does fast flow mean? The ability to rapidly and safely move changes from concept to production is a lean definition I can give. So, given the milkshake story, how do we build less platform and get more done? So, another chance for putting your hands up. So, who has led a big change, whether it's a tool, a framework, technology? Put your hand up. Yep, so a lot of you in here. Keep your hands up if you still think you're unpopular because of that change. Unpopular. Good, great. So this is all for you, this section. So let's do some therapy. Let's take a step back and play this along. So I'm going to introduce you to a few main characters. For the sake of the next 20 minutes, you're all hired, you're all part of the same company, we're all working, going for the same goal. But I'm going to introduce 3 key people related to platform. Number 1 is Steve from Platform. He works for our infra team. Do we have any Steves in the room by any chance? Great, Steve. Do you work in Platform? Perfect, never mind, you're hired, good. And then Laura works on product team that deals with orders. Do we have a Laura in the team? No, she's working remotely because she can't be here. And finally, we have Jess, the Vice President of Engineering. She's not here today either because she doesn't have time for conferences. She's probably deep in Excel managing a budget. So going back to the job to be done. Say we want to choose how to build. What do you think the 3 key people think for this job to be done? And let's take Steve. Steve wants to introduce Kubernetes because his mate Mike uses it at their company and he's been raving about it. Laura really just wants to deliver her feature in the next sprint, and Jess only cares about what matters, although, interestingly, she hasn't actually told the teams what that is. So how do you build a platform out of this? So the answer to this, the first step is always, in my mind, to build a golden path. We're going to be intentional about what we want to do to constrain the tech we use. We're going to pick the things we want to use. By doing so, we're picking the things we don't want to use, the things outside of the golden path. And I guess I might hear you saying, well, what about autonomy? And I think we've talked about it a lot today already. Constraints reduce decision fatigue. They don't necessarily reduce autonomy. And also, I've heard the term another overload. It's another overloaded term. Sorry, go through these, where you might have heard them as paved roads, guardrails, playbooks, reference architectures, blueprints. Different companies call them different things, but essentially the same idea: making good choices, the easy choices. So what it looks like in most cases is that you have all of this. The effect of a golden path is that you can take a sprawling tech stack like this and actually reduce it to a handful of tech you actually need. Some serverless functions because you've waddle mapped it and realized that you're not in the business of caring about servers. GitHub Actions to deploy them and Datadog to observe them, or any other provider, just pick one. A database and event bus technology, and a payment provider. I'm obviously over-exaggerating. You don't only need these things, but you don't also need the sprawling tech. But it's not only about the tech. It's about design decisions that can also sprawl. So for UX design, you can pick a UX design, you can base it on material design or anything else, and add your conventions on top of it. You'll probably need an API design guide. There's companies out there that have been doing it for years, Stripe, and add your own sprinkle of conventions on top of theirs, and you're done. Same applies to event design. You don't want the teams to be choosing their own conventions. Use a standard, maybe cloud events, and reduce your team's decision fatigue. As you've all kind of introduced a big change in your companies, and you're all introducing this change to our company, golden paths are a step change. They're bigger than an incremental change. So the issue with step changes is that they can come with bumps. They're never that smooth. Usually what happens is this. You introduce a golden path. Everyone hates you because they didn't want to use the tech that you've chosen. And at the end, no one helps you on the way up. But I'd like to say that these big changes, you will get pushback, that inertia in modeling maps terminology, but it's worth the effort to overcome inertia, because if you don't, you'll end up getting a step change that is chosen by Steve. So Steve over there, he's chosen a step change, and he's picked Kubernetes. And that's okay. But then Laura wants an observability tool, so she's gone and chosen Sentry instead of Datadog because she used it in her previous company and she's familiar with it and makes loads of sense for her. But the problem is that Jess is then sat there and is, to say the least, not very happy that she now has to pay for 2 observability providers. She has to hire Kubernetes people, and she has no idea how to do that, and she's a bit overwhelmed. So my point here is not to say that Jess needs to make the choices and call the shots. But my point is that if you're going to go for a golden path, you need to think about the key people. And what does each one of them want? So Laura wants freedom and flow. Steve wants guardrails. And Jess just wants consistency and coherence, and that will help with recruitment and learning. The golden path must be co-designed with the users, so the teams in mind, and not led by a single key person. And that's the key element of this. That's the one advice I'd give. 2 advice. 2, 1, create a golden path. 2, co-design it with the key people. I'm guessing we have a few people in here, different scales of companies. At what scale do you need a golden path for your jobs to be done? Jobs to be done is probably still met with your AWS out of the box. If you're a startup, if you're a scale-up, you might see some first signs of duplication and drift, so platform emerges to reduce that friction. Golden path. And then actually, jobs to be done at the enterprise level are still quite critical to keep autonomy and speed alive. But the fact that you've introduced a golden path never means they'll just be adopted. And we've talked about that in this conference already. You're going to have to hold some hands. and this will make sense in a little bit once we go through this. Because going back to our people, Steve wants to write Helm charts, remember, because he's introduced Kubernetes. Laura still wants to create the feature quickly and safely, and Jess wants to deliver the feature that she promised the product. So how do you make all of these people happy? There's a golden path we need to walk all these people down. And the trick is not to build everything at once, because you can start with a minimal viable platform, or whatever we call a lean approach to platform, and the thinnest layer that solves the real jobs to be done. Going back to one of the jobs to be done, which is spinning up a service, how do you help the team spin up that service with the least friction possible, but with safety? One way that works really well, and we did at Flipdish, was by holding hands. So if you're Steve, you probably want to go hang out. So you want to go and hang out with the product team, and you want to learn from them. You want to learn what they want to build, how they want to build it, and they'll learn from your expertise. And that way, then they can start building the thing, and then the easiest next step is to write it down. Don't jump into writing code straight away. And then finally, once the product team has built their thing, you've documented, you can start thinking codifying the platform. In this case, we built an AWS account factory for the other teams to build their workloads in. But we did it in this manner, in this lean fashion. So we went from creating the golden path to using the golden path, feedback provided, then creating the platform. The platform was used, then the platform improved, and we had a virtuous reinforcing cycle that allowed us to actually build things that were useful. Another example comes from someone you might be familiar with, someone that introduced me earlier, Andy. He told me a story about how at Foot Asylum they use this approach. So what they needed a location service to provide information about their retail stores. So typically what you do, you'd reach out, you'd go away, build an API, do everything that you need to do to dynamically return data. But they realized that the frequency of the data would change so low that it didn't add value to make this dynamic. So what they did instead is they just introduced a JSON behind an API gateway, because that would be enough to unblock the product team to carry on working. The assumption being that at a later point they would come back to iterate it, but then 6 months later that static data was doing just fine. If they needed to change it, they would just add the store manually, because they only changed it maybe every 1 to 2 months. Another approach of a minimum viable platform was at Cinch. We called it the walking skeleton. And this included literally having the goal of getting something to production that barely had any meat on it, but proved the technical choices we're making. We can get to production, and we can have a hello world. And then we can consider other things as we go. And with this approach, we got 6 teams to build the platform that sold cars online and delivered to your home, and we made it happen within 6 months. So if you take one takeaway that joins the 3 approaches together of how you build platform, it would be this. A good platform evolves by listening to bypasses, not chasing adoption, and then pave the road for these paths to be easy to walk across, and teams can focus on delivering value. One question I get a lot is, well, okay, that's all good, but how do you choose what to put in platform? And the classic thing is what to leave open versus what to be strict on. Over the years, I've learned that with some things you can be more relaxed, and with others you just need to accept that you're going to be unpopular because you're going to be strict on them. Examples of things that you can be relaxed. If teams want to implement hexagonal architecture and ports on adapter in their repository, let them do that. You don't need to over-specify how they structure their repos. If teams want to pick a logger or a third-party package that they think is more useful for their repo, then do that. I've seen many failed attempts of introducing a standardized logger, and then the next time the team will just pick one from NPM for a valid reason and say, well, this is better, and then you're back to non-standardized. Pipeline is an interesting one. So these are just examples of things that I would probably leave open. If you find yourself oversubscribing pipelines, then you're probably being too rigid, and you're not allowing them to have a pipeline for their specific service or their specific app. Things that you probably need to be strict on. So infrastructure as code, CI/CD, observability providers, these things should be standardized and be pick one and move on. Security and North, thanks, Dan had a great talk before this, all about how you embed security and North into your teams, and that's something you need to be strict on. And your teams will need API and event design. Give them the standard, as I said earlier, and they'll be happy that you made the choice for them. There's a few things that people don't tell you about platform as well, which I think are trends that I'm seeing in 2025 that are going to be part of platform more and more. Costs are part of the platform. AWS is pushing for frugal architecture. We are in times that we need to be frugal with our architectures. And the tooling is maturing a lot to provide these cost tooling to the teams to use. Observability is probably more important than infrastructure or CI/CD. It's not competition here, but actually what your users see is what observability telemetry gives you. So that's probably more important. So platform is a big player in this space. And another big one is incident management. It's not something you can just switch on upstream or PagerDuty. It's a capability you need to introduce to the teams and help them get better at. Again, same question applies. At what scale do you need a platform and jobs to be done? At a startup, you probably don't need a platform at all. Use managed services. At a scale-up, the temptation will be strong, but only if you're solving real jobs to be done. So create templates and sensible defaults, but only to accelerate safe delivery. And at an enterprise level, the challenge is to avoid big banging new parts of it. So, you've created a golden path, you've built a platform, so where do we go from here? At this point, you need to start making some intentional moves. Thinking about favorite people, Steve wants things under control, Laura wants speed, and Jess wants visible ROI. Laura has these jobs to be done, but one of the biggest risks I've seen over the years for platform engineering, and I've heard it today as well, are teams who don't see value in being enabled. They just don't see it. So you have to make them an offer they can't refuse. That's not to enforce it, but it's to make them an offer that they'll be attractive to them. And there's an interesting thing that happens that usually Steve plays a big role here. And when infra people address jobs to be done, how do we think this will go? We start hearing things like, we can't deploy until Steve's back from holiday. So Steve, please don't go on holiday because we need to do things. The work flows through Steve and through people instead of through systems, and that's the opposite of fast flow. We hear other things like we don't know how it works. Steve set it up for us. So teams actually stop learning, and applies to the security stuff that Dan was saying earlier as well. And the third thing is that we have a platform, but it feels like another ops team. And the platform teams say this as well. We feel like an ops team, and that's where the platform stops evolving. So what can Steve do instead? I think the story of Steve is not to solve this. They can't solve this alone. The individual heroics is the issue here, which leads to systemic failure. The real trick is to think about enabling and collaboration modes. And you're probably quite familiar to, these are quite familiar to you, but enabling is easier said than done. It becomes an art of picking the right collaboration mode if you're the platform team. So you can go from facilitating by jumping on a call with a product team to deploy their first service, but not always do this for them. Spend a week working collaboratively with the orders team to improve the website's performance. By doing so, the orders team can benefit from your expertise and learn from you, as opposed to you doing it in isolation without the needed context from the orders team, and you can get the job done in the meantime. And finally, this is my favorite one. Use infrastructure as code that teams understand to provide things like AWS accounts or anything that they need to use. Don't use something that's alien to them. Apart from the art of picking your collaboration modes, there are 4 ways to think about platform that are subtly effective. This is scary to think, but Steve, you might not always have the best solution. Maybe Laura from the orders team has already solved this. And if we take the example of Laura has gone away and figured out the best approach for authorization, you've helped her out to get it even more secure and robust. And Steve from Platform needs to be the systematic thief of good stuff and elevate good patterns to platform where necessary. So I've gone a long time without mentioning those 2 letters, AI. And this is my single AI-related advice, because distributing good practice like this has never been easier in the form of AI context. So now all you need to do is to share what you learned about authorization as a cursor rule, that we use cursor, but any type of rule, with other repos. So product teams' AI agents can give them solid guidance when they're working on authorization. The second way to think about platform is thinking in capabilities, not tooling or solutions. And this is the difference between Steve from Platform choosing PowerShell to solve the problem versus choosing TypeScript for solution because Laura feels more comfortable with it, even if TypeScript is not strictly the best tool for the job here. A third way is that because you will get that pushback that we talked about earlier, choose to use maps, not opinions. And that can manifest in a few forms. One great start is event storming. Another one is development value streams. I won't get into these. Or even Wordly maps. You'd be surprised how quickly you can get to a commonly accepted solution for all these, for all the teams in this way. And you can use user needs mapping. The book is out. I bought one earlier. And Rich Allen is here if you want to speak to him about it. It's a great approach to really understand what you're building. And another approach, an example of a map that we did was a DevOps checkpoint at Cinch. We used this so that teams could self-evaluate against Dora, mapping out their development value stream, and identify their top improvements they can make to improve their system of work. Obviously, Dora has evolved as well, so you need to evolve with the research, but platforms have a key role to play on these approaches. Sorry, and that's the DevOps checkpoint. Finally, a final surprising way to think about platform is that core vendors, the platform below your platform, really do matter more than you think. So I've talked a lot, but put your hand up if you trust me by now. A little bit? Okay, not that many. So for those of you who trust me, I'll tell you a secret. Everyone else, just don't listen. So when you go back to work this week, or towards the end of the week, add your core vendor's account manager and solutions architect to your Slack. Because their bosses are telling them they need to speak to customers more. You are paying them a lot of money. So instead of having isolated monthly sync calls and email chains, make them your real platform ally by connecting them directly to your engineers. So while you're at the conference right now, while I'm at the conference right now, there might be a conversation with between the engineers and a solution architect at AWS or at Datadog or any kind of provider that I didn't even participate in. I don't need to be the go-between. And finally, back to Jess and her spreadsheets. I won't elaborate on this too much due to time, but a massive consideration for platform is that it can be a vehicle for modernization if you choose to do so. In fact, if you don't, the platform itself can be an anchor that drags you down and doesn't allow you to accelerate. If you're Jess, it's your choice to make what type of modernization you want to make and what platform you want to choose. So I've said a lot. A common question I get, and I've heard other people ask throughout this conference, is how do you know the platform works? Honestly, I don't think you can measure a ton of things, but I do pay attention to signals. Instead, again, previous speaker Dan said something similar. Product quality improvement. Number one, product quality improvements are experienced by your customers. This may well be a product of your platform efforts, but the customers don't know this, but you know it, and that's a success for you. Your engineers are actually happier, and there's ways to measure that. They can do their work of adding value without drowning in decisions and legacy. And Steve from Platform is not hidden away writing PowerShell scripts. He's actually focusing on enabling the teams to achieve fast flow. Those are your signals. Those are three signals that I could think of. And that's me. That's my experience. And this is our cat Echo, by the way. He is real, and I know he's adorable. He loves milkshakes too. From milkshakes to being unpopular and holding hands, and then to making intentional moves, this is what I've learned about platform in the past few years. Obviously, your context is unique, so the next chapter is yours. But you have one core job, is to ask this question. How can we sell more milkshakes? Go from a 23-minute drive job to be done to a milkshake platform, to a fast food place platform engineering. In engineering terms, finding the platform milkshakes can manifest in these four jobs to be done. Enable fast flow by choosing a golden path. Get Steve, Laura, and Jess to be friends to create an effective golden path and platform. Obviously, make them an offer they can't refuse. to make your platform attractive and one that solves your problems to be solved. Build a minimum viable platform by either holding hands, building an API with a static JSON file, or walking skeletons. Get great at picking the right collaboration mode for the circumstance. And think of platform differently. Elevate LoRa solutions to platform. Pick a tool that teams want to work with, not the tool Steve from platform wants to use. Use Miro to your advantage when you sense big debates coming up, so map it. And go to your Slack tomorrow, add your key people to it. They want to talk to their customers. If they don't, you're probably using the wrong platform and paying them a lot of money. And finally, whatever you do, pay attention to the desired paths and pave them. Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.